Yeah, it's interesting. We were just listening to some press clips from this weekend. Nebraska had a close scrimmage, and Coach Rhule was talking about tackling. And it obviously it draws the fans' ire, but it's really difficult to do. And if you're coaching, Howard, you see all these camps, and we're going to get into it. When you're simulating tackling and trying to get guys to the ground with limited padded practices, if you're coaching, are you putting guys in phase so they can see what it looks like realistically? Or are you kind of going back old school with your tackling drills if you want to really learn to get guys to the ground, considering you're talking about playing at angles now?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really a tough decision, and one of the decisions that has to be made, obviously, by all these coaching staffs. But it also a lot has to do with what type of team you have. Do you have a veteran team that's played a lot of snaps, or do you have a young team that's really going to need to get some of those skill sets developed? And you look at Nebraska, when you look at the veterans that they have, particularly on the back end, those guys have played a lot of football, and so you would believe that they can get in the phase and be able to do the things that they need to. Because the bottom line is you're trying to get these guys to opening week. And now with the 12-team playoff, you need to have so much more depth.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I'm noticing from teams that really have an opportunity to go deep. Right? Look, everybody believes they do, but the reality is that all of them don't. And you can tell the ones that do, and they have to continue to build that depth. I mean, you look at Ohio State, use them as an example of all the injuries they had on that offensive line last year. They were able to have younger guys and some other guys be able to step up and fill in. And I think, again, if you want to make a run deep into the playoffs so you can get there, you have to have young players or inexperienced players that you've seen, not only that you as a coaching staff have seen make plays, but you also need their teammates to know that they can make those plays, not just in practice, but also in game situations, and not necessarily mop-up duty.
So after you spent some time in Lincoln, was it the depth that stood out to you that impressed you with the Huskers, or was there something else that stood out the most just from what you were seeing in practice or what you heard from the team?
Yeah, I think there is the veteran part of it, and then you see some of the veterans that they were able to go into the transfer portal and see some of those guys like Key didn't practice the day we were there, but I think he's going to be fine. And the coach said no big deal. But when they start to get some of those parts really rolling, that's what I mean. When you start to put this together, and the quarterback looks so much more comfortable. You feel it in talking with him. He seems like he's more comfortable from a mental standpoint. Physically, he looks great. And listen, there's a lot of pressure on him to put up the numbers and lead this program last year, but he was still just a true freshman. And there is still so much of the game that he has to continue to learn and to develop with. And then you have the change during the season. Things seem to take off for him, but you still have to learn the game. You have to learn to play the game. You have to learn to be able to take care of your body. And as a true freshman, it's a lot of things flying at you. So to see him more relaxed in this environment, in this camp that we saw him, and also getting the opportunity to talk with him, he just feels more confident. And when you have a quarterback that has that type of confidence, not the arrogance part of it, but the confidence, and you see the other guys that are willing to follow and really willing to get on board, and you look at the offensive line, I really like just where they're going and how they're developing. Still got to go play those games. Still got to win the close games. But I think that's something that they have to get over. And as Coach Rhule talked about, listen, we point to all those close games, right? And he's been really clear. He said we probably weren't good enough. We probably got those games closer because, they may have been blowouts at the time and we were able to get back into them. But we need to be better, and he feels like this team is a lot better than they have been in the previous year.
I'm going to stay with the Huskers just for a sec before I go big picture. Last couple of weeks, I've been talking about are we just kind of gun shy as a fan base where it's been a little bit of a sore spot up front in terms of what we've been able to do and accomplish the last handful of years. I actually think the offensive line, for the first time in a long time, is a position of strength. I think they're deep. I think they're big. They're strong. They're athletic. You got guys with game experience. Would HG, would you step out and say, hey, you know what? I think at Nebraska, the offensive line is a strength. Would you stand on that, 10 toes down?
Yeah, I would. I absolutely would. Because as you mentioned, you've been watching and living this for a long time. this is a much better line. And I think it also speaks to just how quickly you can change your fortunes in the transfer portal when you get the right guys back into your program and get those guys to gel as quickly as they can. I'll throw this at you. I was just at Purdue a couple of days ago, and this is a team that it is totally. They've got 81 new guys on that roster right now. So, they have totally changed that around. But the offensive line, it looks like it may take them a little bit longer to gel, and that's going to be from every program. But it looks like Nebraska has hit their stride with a combination of what they have and what they've brought from the portal, that they're going to be ready to go. I know Emmett's excited to run behind that group, and talking about back, really watching him, the second half of the season and to be more involved in the pass game. I think he's going to be a true weapon for the Cornhuskers.
Yeah. So we've had a conversation earlier with Sam McEwen, talking to him about just, the importance of physicality when it came to that first Big Ten game against Michigan. Did you get the sense that Nebraska's physicality matches where their offensive line play is at? Because there's been a lot of talk.
Give and take,
a lot of local talk about the defensive line, offensive line, strengths of the team, that sort of stuff. But does the team have the overall physicality to match up in the Big Ten for the upcoming season?
Yeah, I think when you talk about physicality, that's also the way you play the game or the way the game is called, right? I think you can get into a situation where you want to take an advantage and be able to throw it around and take advantage of matchups that you may have outside. But when you start talking about a team being physical, what's happening on first down? What does it look like? Can they line up and punch the team in the mouth that's across the ball, however? Whether particularly in the run game, or what happens when it's 3rd and 2? What is your play call? What are some of the things you're looking at? Do you have an advantage? And those are things that, quite frankly, we're not going to know. We're not going to know that, because one of the things that happens too during this, we rarely see ones versus ones. We really don't get an opportunity for that one day that we're floating in and supposed to know all that we need to know about a team. We don't get a chance to see that a lot of times. So it's you can see just how they're operating when they go 9 on 7. That's a physical part of a drill. You can find out the toughness there. I think when you go watch pass rush drills, you can see the physicality in those situations as well. But as you start to get away from the football, you don't necessarily see that unless it's good on good. And I think those are things, as we go back, we mentioned tackling, it's one of those things that we don't really get a great gauge for until that first game. And that's one of those situations where, when you're tackling, you're taking everybody to the ground, you might be able to get a better idea of that. But the fact, at least from where I sit, you really don't get a good idea of that until you start to get put in some of those game situations versus good.